Hello slimy fertilers. Today I'm going to be dipping my toe back into the murky puddle known as feminism. Today's video comes from a channel called Boldly, which was formerly known as BuzzFeed Yellow. Seems BuzzFeed are changing the names of some of their channels to try and avoid the association with the word BuzzFeed, being as that kind of turns a lot of people off watching their material. So without further ado, because this is quite an interesting one, we'll get going and see what they have to say.
When do you think the United States ratified equal rights for women?
Was it 1970s?
42, 44.
44?
Early 70s?
I believe somewhere in the 1920s.
It's an interesting question, but another question would be, when did they ratify equal rights for men?
Do you think women are equal in the United States?
No.
Yes, more than equal.
No, it's not.
I do, yes. I know a lot of women who feel equal.
Oh, disgusting shit, Lord. Look at him there with his beard and his white skin, and he's probably got a cock as thick as a Coke can.
No.
No.
No, it's not equal. It's not close.
What amendment states that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex?
That's funny, that doesn't sound anything like a bill proposal for the equal rights of women. It sounds like a bill proposal for equal rights of all. It's very egalitarian of them, isn't it?
I believe that's the 4th Amendment.
16th Amendment.
I'd say that's the 25th Amendment.
What if I told you that we never passed that amendment I read?
Really?
No, it can't.
I'm not surprised.
You see, what they're referring to here is something that was being known as the Equal Rights Amendment, which was first put before the government in 1923 and has consistently come up every so often since. We'll go into a little bit of detail about that later, but let's just say that every time it comes up it gets defeated for a particular reason.
Do you think we should have that in the Constitution?
I don't think it's required.
Oh, there he goes again. I love this guy. I don't know. He sort of looks a bit like Mark Hamill. It could actually be Mark Hamill. I don't fucking know. But yeah, I don't think it's required. The way that a lot of the other laws work means that the Equality Amendment isn't really needed. It would be nice, but it isn't really needed. I also love the look on the blonde lady's face there, stood next to him, where the way she looks at him as if to say like, "Oh God, what's he gonna say?" So I think it's just fucking ace.
I think it's very important.
I think you guys are going to gain something. I think you're going to lose something. I think it's like a devil's dagger. So.
This guy is unwittingly an absolute genius. Just wait and see.
So basically there's no hope, it's a lose-lose situation, and we're all going to become handmaids eventually.
Ooh, pop culture references. You know that an argument's doing well when it has to include pop culture references. Yay!
Basically.
So all of this talk about ratifying equal rights pretty much narrows down to one thing: the Equal Rights Amendment. It's an amendment to the Constitution that was first introduced in 1923 by Alice Paul, shortly after women got the right to vote. It called for women's equality, stating that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. It failed at the time.
Yep, all this is true. It was introduced in 1923, just after women got the right to vote and everything like that in the US. It was debated and everything like that, and it failed. But why did it fail? Well, the reason is because the proposed amendment was made by a group of feminists, as it said, basically in order to demand and put into law the absolute right of equality. Unfortunately, not all feminists agreed. Hashtag not all feminists agreed with this, and they began fighting against each other because the amendment itself doesn't specifically target women. It basically grants equal rights for all, regardless of sex, as it says. This means that at the time women would have been obligated to serve in the military and do quite a lot of other things that society expects of men that women find somewhat distasteful. So as it was argued, basically the people who said, well, no, we want equality, but we also want to retain special rights for women.
Was introduced again and then kept getting introduced into Congress. Now it's been introduced in every single congressional session since 1982.
Yep, that is correct. It has been introduced in every single Congress since that time. It also showed up a couple of times during the 60s and 70s as well, following the, the kind of women's liberation movements of the 60s and 70s. But every single time, the this wonderful, Equal Rights Amendment gets kicked out. Why? Because feminists object to losing their special privileges as women. So it gets kicked out because they start moaning that they don't want to do the nasty things that are required of them, that will be required of them by law.
I mean, that's crazy. The ERA is like your really needy ex-boyfriend, Steve, who texts you every 6 months just to see how your mom is doing. We know that's not what it's about, Steve, and...
The level of projection in that statement is just fucking palpable.
Maybe the ERA, like Steve, should just accept its failure and move on. I mean, women are already equal according to that guy.
Yeah, that disgusting, bearded, large penis, shitlord, sexist, racist, transphobic motherfucker. I knew that they'd bring him up again at some point.
So maybe this is just a bunch of ladies who've watched a little too much Handmaid's Tale and have nothing better to do.
Yeah, I think you probably have watched a bit too much The Handmaid's Tale, being as that you keep referring to a popular culture item when you're trying to discuss a major changes to the text of the United States Constitution. If you've got to base your thing on that, then you probably should be finding something else to think about and concentrate on. I don't know.
To set this straight, I decided to talk to some professionals to see why the ERA is so important. So women are already equal.
Okay, so I did a little bit of background checking on the experts that we're looking at here. First and foremost, I looked at the website given, the passtheera.co, and it is a website which is basically a little more than a series of tools which you can use to bother politicians and stuff like that, and start basically a self-run activism campaign to push the ERA. However, when you do a little bit more digging, as when it showed you were walking in, the sign outside said ENSO. And I was looking and I could not find anything called ENSO, and when I just typed in enso.co, because that was the email domain given given on the Pass the ERA website, it turns out that ENSO itself, links will be below obviously, ENSO itself is basically a little more than an advertising agency. To quote from their work section, it says, mission-driven creativity, visionary brands and communities with shared values working together to drive business success with positive impact. Now the problem is when you get things like this and then they run it like a business. I'm just flicking through the ENSO website now, and there is very, very little on there. Let's have a look. And here's their page about our About Us, people page, staff. It says, we are a collaborative with expertise in advertising, social innovation, political organising, the arts and business consulting to develop a unique approach to impact. This is not a genuine political movement. Their experts are advertising executives. They're wanting to push a product, and I'm just wondering how much they're getting paid to do this, because the problem is when you get paid to do something, whether you believe it or not is in question.
Well, that's a complex question.
Good God. Molly Tormey, as she is given here, looks terrified. And she just sort of sat there like, I don't know whether to speak, am I allowed? And it's quite clearly the other one is the mouthpiece for this one. and that rather threatening kind of where she turns her head and looks at the other one, it's rather telling, really.
Are women equal in the eyes of the law? No.
No.
Wow! The land of make-believe!
No, of course women aren't equal in the eyes of the law. They're above the law. They're more than equal. Just ask anybody who's ever been to a divorce court or a family court or anything like that. Women most certainly aren't equal. They're superior.
Are women equal inherently? Yes. Our
Indeed, everyone is equal, equally as worthless.
research would show
She means market research, not actual proper, scientific research.
that most people think that we're already guaranteed equal rights. Actually, 80% of people, when they're made aware that we're not, and asked if they would support an amendment to guarantee those rights, actually 94% of people say they would.
Yep, 94% of people said they would, until they actually find out what that, equality actually means, and then some people sort of go off it.
So despite all of the discord that we have in America right now, people of every demographic appear that they would support this. The problem is that people don't know that we're not guaranteed these rights, and most people under 35 at least have never heard of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Yeah, the reason why most people aged under 35 in the US have never heard of the Equal Rights Amendment is because every time it's come up in the past, it has been defeated as both as a topic of debate in Congress and for ratification as an amendment to the United States Constitution. The vast majority of the time, this is because feminist pressure groups refuse to accept that the ERA would also mean that the women would be obligated to sign up for selective service. For those of you who don't know, selective service is basically a form of soft national service, which at the moment states that all men aged between 18 and 25 are required by law to sign up to it, and it assesses whether they would be potentially subject to conscription during a time of war, which means mandatory military service, whether they like it or not. A lot of women don't want to register for military conscription. A lot of men don't particularly want to register for military conscription either, but they are forced to by law. So what usually happens is the ERA comes up and somebody tacks on an extra bit to it to say that women should be exempt from signing up for selective service, which, when you're talking about an amendment which guarantees in law equality for both sexes, it kind of defeats the object, because what you're doing then is you're giving a special privilege to women that men don't enjoy, and that's why it gets thrown out, because as a lot of people point out, what's the point in having equality if a certain demographic has special privilege over somebody else to basically not get killed?
What are some examples of how women aren't equal?
Well, there's the legal things like pay.
Not even gonna go into that.
And the level of legal scrutiny when they go into courts with the gender discrimination case.
Workplace discrimination, pregnancy discrimination in the workplace.
For people who are claiming to have researched the legal situation with regards to the equality of women, they're not very good. Both workplace discrimination and pregnancy discrimination already have numerous legal statutes that you can go and make a case to a court. If you can prove this, that you are being legitimately discriminated against, your employer will be held to account for it. To say that there's no legal representation for this is just basically an outright lie. But then, these are advertising executives, not legal experts.
Domestic abuse and violence, where women just don't have the same legal recourse.
Women have exactly the same rights as men when it comes to that. If your partner is kicking the fuck out of you or whatever, you can call the police. In fact, even if your partner isn't kicking the fuck out of you, a woman can call police and be confident in the fact that the police will haul the man away regardless of whether he's actually done anything or not. Because obviously the Duluth model states that all men must be aggressors and therefore have to be removed from the property for the safety of the women. Unfortunately, this is not equal, And if the ERA was introduced, the Duluth model would be binned straight away. This is another reason why this amendment gets defeated every time it comes before Congress.
I couldn't help but notice that we were all white women. Is this like the early feminism of 1923, an amendment that only works for white women while ignoring women of color?
Well, no, an amendment based on providing equality of the sexes doesn't make any kind of provision for what colour people's skin is, because that's not what it's for. So we're going down the rabbit hole into the land of make-believe now.
I wanted to find someone who'd be able to answer this, so I got in touch with Carol Jenkins, an Emmy-winning journalist and a founding president of the Women's Media Center.
You know, of course I'm a woman of color, so I know many women of color who feel that the ERA has nothing to do with them.
Well, of course it doesn't, because it guarantees them equal rights based on their sex. It doesn't guarantee them special rights based on the colour of their fucking skin.
But I come from a feminist family. One of the reasons that I am there, and I take my granddaughter with me lobbying on Capitol Hill for the bills that are before Congress, is that women of color need it more desperately than anyone else, quite frankly, to make sure that those numbers in pay differences and in access to education and employment, you know, women are still discriminated against because of the color of their skin. So, you know, I would say that this ERA, what we're fighting for now, includes everyone.
What they're referring to here is the latest kind of attempt to get the ERA in and ratified. Basically, what it is just it's the the standard text, guaranteeing equal rights without based on sex, but they've tacked on a load of other stuff to basically grant special privileges to what they call people of colour, but unfortunately it's basically referring to black women. Her statement that women aren't allowed access to education and stuff is pure bullshit, because women outnumber women outnumber men in college college applications and college attendance than so to try and tack this onto something that is basically good is it's quite disingenuous, because it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having gender equality enshrined in law, because what they're trying to do is provide more special privileges for people based on skin colour and sex.
It includes people of different faiths and disability, of sexual orientations. That we're working for the inclusion of everyone in America.
A bill that seeks to enshrine into law equality based on sex does not need to include mentions of people of colour, different faiths, disabilities, and so on and so forth. That is a completely separate issue and should be made as a separate bill. What they're trying to do here is tack on their own personal crusades onto something that is basically they're doing what SJWs do, is they come into something and they start ruining it.
So it turns out that women aren't totally free under US law.
You're free to vote, you're free to have families, you're free to travel unmolested, you're free to do basically anything that you want within the rigors of the law. Something that is not rights that are not extended to men. Men may be obligated to be conscripted. Men are given less rights in court than what women are. So to say that women are not totally free is just disingenuous bullshit. It's it's quite pathetic at this point to see a video which is talking about equal rights being just basically having lies tacked on. And having bullshit points brought up just based on because we want something for free and we don't see why we should have to suffer the consequences for it.
And that women of color are affected by this the most.
Irrelevant. Okay, so I snipped a fairly long section out here where basically she goes on about the government trying to restrict women's bodies, complain about defunding access to abortion. The reason why this is done is because in America the majority of people in America don't agree that abortion should be available at all. You know, and also there's the thing about women using abortion as a form of contraception, which shouldn't be done at all. You know, abortion should be there for use if people need them. You know, but it's a case of if people need them, not want them. You know, having abortions is not a consumer good. It's a medical procedure which can cause, you basically abort a child, whether that child was wanted or not, and having abortions can also cause a lot of medical problems as well, problems with the reproductive system and stuff like that. My personal stance on abortion is that you know, if people want them, let them have them. You know, if people need to have one, let them have one. If you're just wanting one as a form of contraception, then you shouldn't. There are plenty of other better and more effective forms of contraception available. She also goes on to talk about you know, other things such as defunding of things like pap smears and mammograms, things like that. This is, you know, stuff like that should be available. Unfortunately, because the American healthcare system is completely different to the state-funded healthcare system in this country, it's basically, you know, women routinely get, you know, smear tests and mammograms for free because of, you know, we don't have to pay for it. But in America, everything has to be, you know, paid for by insurance and stuff like that. Medicaid and stuff seeks to provide a kind of light option similar to the NHS, but unfortunately Medicaid is being costing far too much money, which is one of the reasons why Donald Trump is seeking to try and replace it with something else. But unfortunately, every time he his most recent attempt to try and get something a little bit fairer and a little bit cheaper has been defeated because people voted against it, just simply because it's a proposal made by Donald Trump.
Continuously introduces and passes legislation that attempts to limit women's bodily autonomy. But why can't they pass the ERA? This was a question for a lawmaker. So I decided to reach out to Ted Lieu, a California congressman who supports the ERA and who also has really good tweets.
Yeah, poor attempt at humour there, you know, reinforcing the stereotype that women aren't funny. Good on you. People's tweets aren't a measure of their worth, and never should be. As well, we have this congressman who's from California, which is a well-known hotbed of regressive politics. He probably doesn't even know what the actual Equal Rights Amendment would fully entail. He's probably one of those that supports the Equal Rights Amendment that isn't actually for equal rights. It's got all sorts of bits tacked on that make it an unequal rights act. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. You know, he's probably in bed with a lot of the lobbyists.
I represent the 33rd Congressional District in Southern California. I'm a huge supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment. I'm very honored to write an op-ed with Patricia Arquette on the Equal Rights Amendment. I do everything I can to make sure that we have equal pay for equal work.
So that basically means he doesn't do anything then, being as that the Equal Pay Act was passed in 1963 under the government of John F. Kennedy, which guarantees equal pay for equal work regardless of sex, gender, sexual orientation, race, all that kind of crap.
People I've talked to agree that women are equal, or women should be equal, and in your op-ed you said that Americans overwhelmingly support ratification of the ERA, and not many people even realize that the ERA hasn't been ratified.
Yep, the Americans overwhelmingly support the ERA until they find out what it actually entails, and then, like I said before, they sort of go off it a little bit, especially when they're tacking things onto it that make an Equal Rights Amendment an unequal rights amendment.
If there's so much support for it, why can't it pass in Congress?
That's a great question. My first thought is that they're not rational. But there are some people who will not vote for it because they think it's going to result in too many lawsuits. So that's sort of the complaint that I hear from folks who don't want to vote for it.
Indeed, and it's a valid concern, although it's not the main reason why it never gets voted for. Bringing into law guaranteed legal equality or based on sex would indeed result in a hell of a lot of lawsuits, because the companies would struggle to accommodate everybody, just based on sex and gender. For example, if women are allowed to have time off due to period problems, which they now are, then there's no equivalent of that for men. So obviously men would then want to have time off for, I don't know, for having a smelly dick or something. But it's not. We all know the real reason why that it's not there, even though that's a bit Weasley word. It's just because of the amount of problems it would actually cause for women that it never gets passed.
So my response to that is that it's a fear of too much justice.
That it depends on your definition of justice. You see, it's like I said before. If the amendment was passed, it would result in both men and women putting in lawsuits all over the place, because the Equal Rights Act would lead to inequality between men and women, and too much justice. It make it sound like, yeah, finally women will be equal. It's like, no, they won't. They will actually have more. Especially with the amendments that get tacked onto it and everything like that, women would have more rights than men, which yes would lead to lawsuits, but not the sort of lawsuits what they're thinking about.
If there are pay gaps and people are suing to correct that problem, then to me that is something we want to encourage.
As said before, that is already covered under the Equal Pay Act of 1963. There is yet no credible evidence whatsoever to support the concept of a gender wage gap. So lawsuits that would pop up on that particular in that particular sphere would be interesting, but probably wouldn't have the effect that he is quite obviously hoping for there. It would probably result in a series of embarrassing losses, quickly followed by a repeal of the Equal Rights Amendment. Okay, so I've snipped out the rest of the video at this point here, because it just devolves into a boring series of reassertions of stuff they've already gone over, and the representative guy, just talking about other points, why he believes that this thing should go through with all the current bits tacked onto it that should go there. Basically the ones that give privileges to women and people of colour, or coloured people, or blacks, or whatever you want to call them these days. I don't know. I can't keep up with all the terms that the fucking regressives come up with. Once again, it shows that BuzzFeed, even though they're trying to change the name and hide the fact that BuzzFeed are producing poor quality videos which don't contain correct information and only show a kind of skewed view of something. The organisation that they contacted, that were supposedly experts on the ERA, are just basically advertising executives trying to sell something to the public. They're not political experts, they're not legal experts, so again we have a situation where something is trying to be sold to us rather than than enlightening us, kind of thing. Like I said, the Equal Rights Amendment is at its core a very good idea, but as I've also said, as well, not as I've also said, in some cases we agree with, in some cases I'm agreeing with the feminists that disagree with it. The Equal Rights Act with bits tacked onto it, to basically give special privileges to women, is an abomination and completely the opposite of what it should be. So yeah, I'll say all links to relevant sources and the original video will be below. If you like my stuff, you can like this video, subscribe to me, follow me on Twitter, and if you're feeling particularly generous, please donate to my PayPal. I'm currently looking to get some money together to buy a new microphone. I've seen quite a few that would do the job properly at a value of under £20, so if I can get 20 quid together, I will buy a new microphone and my audio quality will improve significantly. All details for my social media stuff are in the card that is that's been up on the screen now. So again, thank you for watching. You have a great day.